Anna.
UK Prime Minister Gordon Brown has pledged to crack down on bonuses. Brown says he will give the financial watchdog, the FSA, the power to clamp down on pay packages that he says encourage reckless behaviour. The Prime Minister says he is convinced that the government must take a tough line on remuneration.
How much more money can they take from these guys? I'm not saying they don't deserve it or anything, but my goodness me. Anyway, well, it's not just the bonus debate that's heating up in the UK. Executive pay packages are also commanding a lot of attention. Details of Reckitt Benckise's boss, Bart Beck's £90 million pay for 2009 caused waves earlier this week. So how is the labour market looking for executive talent? Giles Goschen, a senior client partner at Korn, Ferry, joins us now. I don't resent Bart Beck. To penny, this man has been phenomenal in how his company has outperformed year in, year out. And a lot of this was share options due anyway, I understand. Do people mind remuneration of that scale when the company's done so well on the back of an executive strategy?
Well, I think you're quite right to point out the scale of the advance that the company's made and how well it's performed. But this is an enormous sum, there's no way about it, and money is sexy and people will always talk about it. I think it's a very difficult area to regulate effectively, but overall there is a great deal of scrutiny coming from remuneration committees in terms of not only how will these issues play internally, but also externally, and I think that focus will intensify.
You know what, the remuneration committees are seen as pretty ineffectual by many. What is seen as the real teeth, if it was ever exercised, would be the institutional shareholders and indeed the rest of the shareholder base actually voting against these boards if they pay themselves too much. Unfortunately, that's a toothless response, really, year in, year out from the shareholders. They very rarely actually say, we don't like the money you're paying yourselves.
I think it's a broader issue than that, in fact. It's how the company's image plays beyond remuneration debates, beyond institutional shareholders. It's how the company's image plays more broadly. And it is, in fact, important for the board really to take a grip of that. But in the end, it is a competitive market. And if you want to attract the best talent, then undoubtedly appropriate compensation has got to be put forward. But I think it's all about alignment of long-term interests, long-term value creation for shareholders should be rewarded properly.
Sure.
Giles, it's a very fine PR line that these companies walk then when they award in this climate such enormous packages. When we sit here and say, well, 90 million, that sounds like an awful lot of money. I mean, what doesn't sound like a lot of money then? I mean, it's hard to know where the line is that one crosses. It's somewhere between 0 and 90 million, but we don't know where that is. I remember the boss of Easy Group, Stelios, telling us once that you basically need £10 million to sustain what he would call a very comfortable life, and anything after that is just greedy.
Well, I'm sure 90 million is almost more than a CNBC presenter gets paid these days.
But,
almost.
Nowhere near.
It's very, very difficult to make an overall judgment about these matters, but it's absolutely no doubt this plays very hard outside. The financial press is interested, but the man in the street does have an interest as well, I'm quite sure about that.
How are you guys getting on with this as a backdrop?
Well, very well. We've had a very strong last quarter. Our business in the UK is up more than 50% over the previous year. And that's been driven by two things. One is we made an important acquisition last summer of Whitehead Man. We've been integrating that. The benefits are now flowing through. And the second is that across all of our markets, really, we're now seeing increased optimism from our clients. But there has been a pent-up demand. Last year, they cut back very hard. There was then a hiatus when lots of requirements were just not filled. People didn't want to go into the market. They thought it was too risky. And now we're seeing the benefit of that.
Public sector job cuts, is that going to hurt you briefly?
It won't affect us.
There's not a lot of high-end public sector recruitment going on at the moment?
I think the market in the public sector will be pretty limited over the next year or so.
I think you're right, no matter who wins the election. Lovely to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Glad things are going well. Giles Goschen, senior client partner at Korn Ferry. Let's get some final thoughts from Hans Redeker.